This week on the Virtual Skeptics. Bob is deleted. He is under attack. Barb is looking for her mind. And Tim is lost. Wow. I'm your host, Brian Gregory. And I don't know, breathing heavy this week, apparently, because my panel is in such dire straits. I mean, listen to this. You guys are just suffering.
I said I was looking for my mind. I didn't say I was.
Well, it assumes you lost it.
Pain or anything.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm just trying to be mindful.
Inside joke, but not for much longer.
No.
Let's see. Let me introduce these guys so you know who we're talking to. I should not do that. I should just not do that. Here's the panel. This is Bob Blaskowitz, CSI's conspiracy guy, web columnist, blogger for Skeptical Humanities, and Skepticality contributor. This is Eve Siebert, editor and blogger at Skeptical Humanities and contributor to Skepticality and site at skeptic.com. And this is Barbara Drescher, former psychology instructor, blogger at ICBS Everywhere, and contributor to skeptical projects at insight at skeptic.com. And the odds must be crazy, which is still the best name ever of any blog I've ever.
The odds must be crazy?
Woohoo! Yeah, it's just great.
Wish I could take credit for the name.
All three of you. Hi. See, there,
hi, Brian.
Okay, if you're watching, you want to chime in. Some of you already have. Hi, Pierre. Hi, Alex. Hi, Hardiner. I don't know how to say that. On the live chat on YouTube, or you can tweet with hashtag Virtual Skeptics and get my attention and the rest of us attention, and we'll try. If it's a question, great. If it's funny enough, I'm looking at you. Then I will mention it on the show as well. Please interact. Please have fun. And also, there's a video behind me. Please tell me what it is.
Because he has no idea, which is weird.
I know. It's just random stuff comes on my TV and stuff. Okay. If you see a random dog sighting, his name is Ansel. First up this week, Barbara's going to start us off.
No trivia question, I guess.
No.
We're not doing that anymore?
Apparently not, no.
Okay.
We don't talk about the trivia question. First rule of trivia question is we don't talk about trivia question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Barbara. Show us where your mind is.
I've learned that. Well, something popped up in my Facebook feed today.
Hey, wow.
While I was looking for a topic. And it was an article, a Newsweek article about...
the secret doesn't work. That's the second time in a row. Never mind.
It was an article about mindfulness, and it called mindfulness. It said something like, the title was something like mindfulness and the sham science, or it isn't supported by science, blah, blah, blah. The title was a little misleading. It was actually really talking about a new paper, which does not report on an empirical study. It's in the the journal Perspectives of Psychological Science. It is a very well referenced paper, though. I mean, it has a lot of references. Of course, it's not referenced yet because it just came out, but it has a lot of references. So they did a thorough literature review. So it is more of it's sort of a lit review, but it's really more of a discussion. It lays out some of the problems associated with this current fad they're calling mindfulness. Now, I was drawn to it because mindfulness, in my head, in the field of psychology, it has a sort of specific meaning. But as I was reading the article, I realized that even in my head, I mean, even in psychology, among psychologists, the study is not very well defined. So apparently, though, the term is being used from everything from just being aware, being in present and being aware and in the moment, to very, very specific forms of meditation. And apparently it's being used a lot to discuss meditation.
Yeah, the two cases I can think of right off the bat is one, I guess colloquial, whatever you think about it, paying attention, you're being mindful.
Yeah.
And then there's the new agey mindfulness that they throw around, referring to meditation or becoming
Exactly.
internal.
Now, the when someone would say mindfulness, I would think of something like a being present in the moment, like being aware of knowing what you're doing in order to change your behaviors. You know, like be aware of what you're eating, that sort of thing. And
mindful of what, yeah.
And
be mindful of your teacher. Yoda.
My view of, I'm not in that field, of course, I'm not in that subfield. But but in my head, and I have former students who are and who study that, and in my head, the field defines it a little closer to what you were talking about, Bob, which is something more akin to cognitive behavioral therapy than something like meditation. But apparently it's this term that's been used very widely. And one thing that the article discusses and really complains about, at least initially in the introduction, is how abused it is in the public media, in the general public media, and general public discussions of it. There's a lot of centers out there on mindfulness and blah blah blah. And a lot of them are meditation, and that's problematic. And that's, of course, that happens with everything, especially if it's psychology related. But it's a problem because also a lot of researchers are using the term to refer to things like meditation. So what they talk about in the article was some of the problems with the research, and then some of the problems with how the research is being applied, and attempts to use it as a clinical tool. So, which is the ultimate goal. So the definition of the term is probably the biggest problem. And we just talked about that. But it's more than that. There are methodological challenges, some of which have to do with the definition of the problem. Even if you get more specific, you have to be, when you're defining something in a method, it has to be very specific. And it has to, and there's something called construct validity that you have to be very aware of. And that is whatever you're measuring. Mind fluff?
Do you have to be mindful of
Oh, you have to be mindful.
Validity?
Mindful. I thought you said mind fluff. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
Particular problem.
I'm going to use mind fluff from now on. Because
some people have belly button fluff.
When you're, that feeling when your head's full of cotton, no.
Allergies?
Yes, you have to be more than mindful of it. You have to have good definition. So the construct validity really refers to how well your constructs in your method relate directly to, hopefully directly to the thing that it is you're trying to measure or manipulate. So if you are trying to measure or manipulate mindfulness, how are you doing that? So measuring mindfulness itself is, first of all, it's a process of the mind. So that has its own problems. There's a difference, probably one of the biggest problems if they're measuring it or even trying to do what's called a manipulation check, which is if you manipulate mindfulness, you have to, sometimes it's important to find out whether your manipulation actually worked. But there's a difference between the desire to be mindful and actually being mindful. So especially if you're talking about something like meditation, there's a difference between somebody who's practiced at meditation knows when they've been meditating. Somebody who isn't practiced at it or hasn't been doing it for a while may not even understand what it means to meditate. So that's one of the problems. And a lot of good methodology actually involves defining the independent variable as mindfulness training. So rather than trying to determine whether somebody is mindful or whether you have even succeeded at manipulating mindfulness, if you define your independent variable as training somebody to be mindful, you can tighten up your research a lot. Actually, it sounds like it's getting further away from what you want, but it's actually getting closer to what you want in many ways, and it probably works pretty well. It's a lot more accurate anyway. And it's sort of like the difference between efficacy and effectiveness. If you guys ever heard that efficacy and effectiveness are two different things. So if you're doing, say, medical research, this also works in clinical settings for psychology. But if you're doing medical research, like let's say you're testing a new drug, there's a difference between how the drug works in a very, very controlled setting and how it works when in a not controlled setting. So if you are controlling let's say it's a diet. Actually, a diet's a better example. You can tell somebody what to eat, but you're not necessarily, if you're not there with them 24 hours a day, you're not controlling their food intake. You don't know exactly what they've eaten. Whereas if it's in a controlled setting, like a hospital or something, and they're in isolation, then you can control exactly what you feed them, and you can measure what they eat and don't eat. So that's when you define your variable as training rather than the thing that you're trying to manipulate itself, you're getting closer to something called effectiveness than efficacy, which is a good thing and a bad thing. For one thing, your results can be more generalizable to what actually happens in the real world. And it's a bad thing because then you're not actually measuring the difference between a controlled setting and you can't tell if maybe you just need to work a little harder at your training, if maybe your training isn't good enough, So there are times when you want to measure efficacy or manipulate, and there are times when you want to find out the effectiveness of something. But anyway, in those cases, and when the research is really good, the effect sizes are really small, especially for things like meditation. And this has been going on for decades. I see people citing stuff on Facebook all the time about meditation, and it drives me absolutely crazy because none of this research really adds up to anything. There's tons of all these little studies saying that it's better for this and it's better for that. And it doesn't add up. There's no clear answer to whether meditation does anything. There are some things that
it can make people smug.
It can make people smug. It can also make people believe in something called a unified field, which is insane.
Yeah.
So people do go to the new agey part where it doesn't make any sense and there's no research at all to support it.
The unified field theory, which is an idea.
Yes, but this
idea, but
there's one person that keeps popping
thing.
up.
This is quantum because I'm feeling.
Yeah,
quantum.
it can move that way. But meditation is a real thing, and yet you have these people that take it and turn it into something that it's that's so unsupported, that's mystical or that's metaphysical, or that they imagine has some bearing in the physical reality, but
it can make you levitate.
Isn't supported. Yeah, or fly.
Yeah.
Transcendental meditation is supposed to make you fly.
Yeah, or bounce on your knees.
And ass. Yeah. Let's not forget the goofy ass bouncing of the TM
Hey, the pictures look awesome.
They do. Yeah.
So
I showed my students that. They're like, this is real? I'm like, yeah. Yeah, this is California, kids.
Did you say that was real flying or?
No. Huh?
Real.
I said,
flying.
Tell me when they start flying.
Yeah.
And then they don't say anything. But that just might be because they're my students and they don't say anything. But,
you would think after decades of being just on the cusp of being able to fly that they would be able to fly by now.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my point with this meditation stuff. The research has been going on for decades and it hasn't shown anything. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't work or doesn't have some good uses. I mean, there are things that I can think of actually that people just don't label that way. Like if you think about the Lamaze method, childbirth, that helps women deal with pain. It probably really does. And that's basically mindfulness, because it's meditation, because you're focusing on your breathing. So it's something that it's allowing you to focus on one thing. It works with pain. I can attest to that. It works with sciatica because nothing else does. And all it does is allows you to, or it distracts you from the pain. It helps with asthma, if you think about it. Self-hypnosis, meditation, mindfulness, whatever you call it. But that term mindfulness also applies to things like cognitive behavioral therapy. It has to, because that's mindfulness. So the term is too broad. And that's probably part of the reason why the research is inconclusive, because we don't have our terms defined. A lot of the research is poorly designed. They don't just trying to measure a latent variable, something that's going on in your head, is problematic, because you can deal with self-report, but do people really understand what you're asking them? Not always. And there are ways to do self-report measures that work, but they don't work at all if you don't have good definitions. So there are all these problems, and there is some good research, and some research is well defined, but a lot of it is not, and that's why it's such a mess. So it's not that there's a lot of sham science or bad science behind it. It's just that there's not a lot of cohesiveness to the science. And so we're left with these, no conclusions. And I wouldn't just throw it out just because it's been studied for a long time and it hasn't been supported, nothing's been supported yet. I would say that we need to work on how the research is done. So that's a big part of it. So as a clinical tool, that's where it really starts to get to me. It's sort of like, with education and many other fields, we have to stop putting all this effort into treatments and methods and programs that are way ahead of the research. So there's lots and lots of people making money trying to help people with this thing when there's not really any good science behind it. And what is good shows very small effects.
This sounds to me like a lot of CAM is in the
Yeah.
same. But I mean,
it is. But it's not necessarily pseudoscience.
Yeah.
It depends on how far it goes.
Evidence for meditation, but it's just because the terminology is misused.
Mm-hmm.
Other things get thrown in the same bucket.
But what is there evidence for meditation actually doing? There's not really any strong evidence for it doing anything, even lowering blood pressure. Now, here's the thing: all the things that I mentioned, like asthma and pain, and those things are things that are happening in the moment. Most of the claims about it and these centers that you go to are for learning how to, you do it every day or twice a day, and it's supposed to improve your life all the time. So it's supposed to lower your blood pressure in general. And there's no real good evidence that it does that. And by the way, you don't need to pay somebody thousands of dollars to teach you how to meditate. It's really, really easy. You just sit, close your eyes, try to tune everything out and focus on something like your breathing or a word. And every time your mind wanders, you go back to it. That's it. That's all you do. And there was also some discussion in this paper about some of the dangers of it. And we all know the danger of trying something that to treat any sort of illness, and while also neglecting real treatment. So there's that problem. But they also thought that there was probably, some authors have recommended that there are several psychiatric disorders that they're trying to treat with mindfulness. It's probably contraindicated. It's probably going to harm them more. Things like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress, and even depression. And things, anything with psychosis related to it. You probably don't want those people focusing because
turning inward.
Yeah. You don't want that, not to the degree that that meditation requires. So this piece isn't really damning of mindfulness or even meditation. It's really just a discussion of what needs to be done, tightening definitions and methodology, and studying limitations. Which situations are indicated, which situations it might make something worse for, and that's so on. So I thought that was worth bringing up because I think people tend to go one way or the other with this and think that it's all a scam. It's not all a scam, and it's not all bad. It's just not it's not solid enough, and there are identifiable problems. And if we can identify them, we can work on fixing them, and researchers are working on fixing them. But with all of the research that's out there, there isn't enough that's reformed yet, that's good yet, to really say anything. My gut is, though, that if there were benefits that warranted centers, we know it. That's my gut.
Huh. Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead, finish.
I was just going to say that I do think that it's useful for things like acute pain and maybe asthma, things where we're focusing on one thing and distracting yourself from what's going on. Blood pressure, things like that would help.
So I've been Googling and researching a few things while you're talking because that makes me an expert too. No, I'm kidding.
That's how it works.
No.
I'm not an expert on mindfulness.
But let me hold out. What kind of expert I am?
Well, Brian is now, so it's
yes.
okay.
So, just to be sure, and I think this kind of supports your position. First off, the only mindful quotes I could find from Star Wars are Qui-Gon Jinn, the "Be mindful of the future, but not at the expense of the moment," and Obi-Wan Kenobi, "Be mindful of your thoughts, they'll betray you." Now, I just want to point out, these were radical Jedi and not mainstream. I'm sure they had no evidence to support their particular points of view. and generally not a consensus. So there you go. It supports your...
So I'm thinking, Bob, perhaps we shouldn't use mindfulness to get our insane cat Gavin out of his funk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Probably
that'd be...
not. Depression was on that list of it. It may be contraindicated.
I don't know what to do with him.
Yeah, just kibbles all the time, I guess.
No, that's horrible.
That's what he thinks would be a good, yeah.
We have a cat who's been upset or just acting strangely since we lost Mina.
Yeah.
So.
Oh.
Yeah, you know how when you have multiple animals in a household and one's gone,
yep,
the hierarchies change and things like that.
But he's just gone insane.
But the pecking order, it's not just the pecking order here. This is...
Poor thing.
Yeah. I don't know what's up with him.
His world has been turned upside down.
A little bit. He grooms my head.
Yeah, he has an obsessive compulsive disorder.
Oh.
He's angry all the time. He's hungry all the time. He doesn't like the other cat. He doesn't like to play. He doesn't like catnip. He doesn't like catnip, people.
That's weird.
It sounds like you need to keep him away from the dark side.
Yeah. No,
True.
too late there.
He's vulnerable. He's vulnerable.
Well,
Yeah.
he's a cat. So
He's grumpy cat.
kind of hard to...
He really is.
But he does do love.
Yeah.
He does do snuggles. But yeah. Don't get him.
Really quick there, Steve Exton had a comment in the YouTube chat wondering if an hour of extra sleep or an hour of massage beats mindfulness. And I'm assuming it means meditation. I guess this is...
It's possible. We don't know.
This is one of those nebulous things, I guess.
I've always kind of wondered that about mindfulness because you can see it being used across the spectrum in a variety of ways. And it reminds me of something that Steve Novello once said. It's just like you have to be really careful about defining your terms. You have to be really careful. Are we talking about, the example he was talking about was meditation. What are we really talking about? What we're talking about medically, we're talking about relaxation. you know, and you know, the benefits of relaxation can be, and I think temporary blood pressure and you know, de-stressing and that sort of thing is, yeah, that seems doable. Then there are people who kind of, I don't know, like, if just in love with this thing, this.
Well, everybody wants a magic bullet.
You
know, everybody wants the key, wants to know the key to solving all of their problems, and like the idea of thinking
everybody
that they
knows
have it.
That's
and,
Scientology.
Yeah, that's true.
Any guru or something,
Mm-hmm.
they always have the answer.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and it's simple, and it's free. Basically, I mean, it can be free.
Well, it's not free. That's not Scientology.
Yeah, that's
and it's something everybody can do.
Yeah.
Well,
you know,
that's actually the thing that they don't want you to know.
Yeah.
The thing in the book where they're selling it, when they say the things they don't want you to know, the things they want you to know is you don't need a damn book. But
yeah.
Anyway, speaking of solutions, Bob is next, and apparently he's deluded about something.
Well, I kind of ran up against mindfulness yesterday. In the I'm not exactly sure how to take it sort of sense. So this is just a little story from my life. I was on campus yesterday. I had been getting occasional updates about a upcoming panel discussion about supplements, minerals, and health, right? And it looks like, you know, when I got there to the theater, there were about 100 people, 100 students there. So I guess a lot of them had, for a variety of different classes, were, you know, given extra credit to go or something like that, or were required to be there. And it was, so they sent readings out ahead of time that they wanted people to have a common, you know, basis to speak from. So one was a little bit of regulation. Another one was be skeptical about miracle claims. They had John Oliver's coverage of Dr. Oz. You know, all of these were part of it. And so I was kind of encouraged because it looked like they were going to take like a straightforward look. And we were talking about a school that has a holistic health program.
Yeah. I'm going to say health sciences is big at our school. And there's a wooey branch.
There is one part that's a little bit more off. Yeah. And for reasons that have to do with me not having tenure, I'm not going to tell you what I think about all these people. But no, the people that were up there were generally really quite good. There was a chemist who had developed a lab exercise for her students so that they could test their own, like their protein shakes for certain amino acids. And she gave that as a paper to see if what was on the tin is actually in the product, you know. And that's that's cool. That's a great assignment for people to learn this stuff. You know, we had a registered dietitian who was talking, and he had concerns about purity and quality of these supplements. We had somebody from the FDA. Now, he wasn't from the drug regulation branch, but luckily supplements aren't treated like drugs. They're treated like food, right. For reasons of stupid related to Orrin Hatch. And
it's not just Orrin, but
yeah, but you know, and I talked to him afterward. He was really, he's a really nice guy. From a local, he's an investigator, so he goes out to sites and investigates facilities and that sort of thing. And he was talking about the fly-by-night. You know, so many of the smaller outfits are, you know, they show up and basically they manufacture packaging. So you get shipments of from somewhere else, and they just $30 and, you know, sell it at a greatly inflated markup, right? hooray, you now are a supplement distributor, right? Anyway, mindfulness came up a lot, and some of the people had a hard time sticking to a single subject as they were talking. So mindfulness came up a lot. Other things came up too. People would start pontificating or anyway. So when my turn to pontificate came up, no, so I went up to the microphone.
You couldn't keep to one topic either.
I couldn't. No, I yeah. It's like that with me. But so you know, they'd mentioned a number of the different players who are involved, stakeholders like you know, patients and doctors and therapists and because we have this physical therapy and a nursing program. We had and there were a couple of other business owner, supplement manufacturers, distributors, that sort of thing.
Boy, Ron.
And my question, and yeah, and they mentioned, you know, they said that there was somebody from the business school who's going to talk about marketing supplements, and she said that, and they all seem to be, well, not all of them, not the guy from the FDA, but nobody seemed to say that more regulation would be fantastic. In fact, the person I think from the business school said that, oh, you know, companies are generally doing the right thing.
They are.
They're not trying to poison their customers.
Oh, sure, they do
like
occasionally.
damning with faint praise there, right? You know, but so I went up and I and my question was, so who, you know, who takes care of the patients? Who's protecting the patients? The FDA doesn't have the regulatory authority to do what it would want to do, or the manpower to do what it wants to do. I don't trust the companies because, and they had mentioned homeopathy in particular, and I said, you know, because once you've decided that you're going to sell homeopathy, you've crossed an ethical line already, you know, and if you're going to say that it does something, and you know, so we basically, they said, well, you know, it's buyer beware, which, you know, and they also said educate yourself, and I was like, oh shit, I've seen that before.
University.
You know what I really hate is I think my consumers are smart enough. When you get
Oprah,
you know, people like Dr. Oz and
I think
and
people
Oprah
are discerning and
right.
Oh, you mean you're
Women
flattering
need
them?
to take charge of their own wellness.
I know.
There was
I knew exactly who you were doing too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was a panelist who had been a cancer survivor, who is a cancer survivor, and said that they had, when they were they were first diagnosed, and they mentioned that they were a cancer survivor several times, and they when they're first diagnosed, they wanted to do all this treatment, and this person said, no, I want to know why I got cancer, because my immune system is always is always taking care of cancer cells, which is true. It usually works. And they found that she was low in vitamin D. 50% of people have subnormal, you know, have suboptimal vitamin
like me.
D. And yeah, and the fact that somebody mentioned this to her just didn't really occur to her that, like, wow, that's no big fucking whoop. You know, I don't know. So I sat down, and then the next person up
told you.
Huh? Oh,
the next person up told you, right?
Sure did. That that homeopathy has been used by the royal family for 100 years, and so it works.
Okay.
And then a person on the stage said, yes, there are some studies that show it works.
What?
And I wanted like,
and Bob,
I was very well behaved.
Up and grabbed the microphone back from them.
So I went up and I showed them my badge. Bob Blaskowitz, assistant professor of critical thinking. You know, like, So I talked to them afterward, and you know, that was frustrating. That was very frustrating. But most part, it was a great conversation. They informed, you know, they said if you look at a lot of these vitamin studies, some of the vitamins, you know, when a physician gets a nutrition education, they're often talking about like IV or, you know, sinus, you know, feeding people through their sinuses, right? They're just what keeps you alive, not what, you know, day-to-day living. But they did point out that, you know, a lot of that type of knowledge is outsourced to dietitians, like other specialists. And so there was a lot of good stuff in there, but what was frustrating is that there was some bullshit in there, and that those lines weren't always delineated for the students who were there.
Well, of course not, because the same person is saying both. Yeah,
and listen, I don't doubt their credentials at all, right? For the vast majority of the things that they were talking about. And I just wanted to know what the chemist was thinking as they were talking about homeopathy. Because you can't have chemistry and homeopathy in the same universe.
Yeah.
Right? It just doesn't work that way. So, yeah, I was on very good behavior until I get tenure.
Wow. I'm very impressed with you, Bob. Your self-control is...
Now you just sound like you're daring them. Until I get tenure.
And then I'm going after your ass.
It's funny because if you look at the makeup of our holistic health minor, there are a lot of people from all over the curriculum who may have shitty poo-poo to do with health. You know, and we have a really neat curriculum, I think, that encourages people to take things outside of their area of specialty, you know.
That's good.
And maybe even teach outside of your area of specialty, which is, I think you can do that in a way that's responsible and fun for students, in a way that you show them that you too are a learner, and this is how you go about doing it. You know, that's, you know, I think useful. But yeah, it's telling that the holistic health minor isn't in the health sciences program. It's in general studies.
Oh.
So it's in my unit.
That.
You didn't know that? Yeah.
No,
so,
I'm in gens too, but...
Yeah. So...
What can you do? Because I know some of my students who are in health sciences have some occasionally odd ideas.
Yeah.
Mind you, my nursing students from back in the last place sometimes did as well. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, nursing is a mixed bag still. It's getting better, but there are a lot of schools out there that still just teach gobbledygook. You know, just pseudoscientific bullshit. I mean,
well, I'm not always sure it came from the program. Some of them
may go into nursing because of woo. I had someone who described what I think was moxibustion. I haven't seen moxibustion in God knows how long. Right?
Moxibustion?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
One of the lesser characters in Chicago.
Moxibustion. That's good.
It sounds like a burlesque performer to me, but yeah.
What you do with moxibustion is
you take
like sage or something, and you put it between your toes and you light it on fire, and the smoke.
Oh, I've heard that. It's sort of like ear candles or butt candles, but it's
butt candles.
Acupuncture.
Yes.
Acupuncture with fire sometimes.
Yeah. So
there was a vet down the road from us in Atlanta that offered moxibustion for animals with fur, which seems fire and fur just seems bad. Yeah. I don't think there was actually an open flame though, so.
But no, that was funny. My student was like, "Yeah, my mom really believes in the natural herbs and stuff, and she took me to this place and I had to go." It was really weird. It was like a religion, she said. And I was like, good, you got there on your own, kid. That makes me happy.
Yeah, there was one time I was talking to a class that I was a guest speaker, talking about the class was like current trends in psychology. So it was basically an exploration of careers in psychology, things that you can do as a psychologist. And I'm talking about skepticism. And one of the students in the class, her parents were doctors who had foot baths as part of their.
Oh no!
Yeah. And Reiki and foot baths, the detoxing foot baths, yes, and that was part of their practice. And what do you say to that? I mean, they're doctors, you know.
Wow. Well, I mean, they're not great doctors, to be honest.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
yeah, that happens occasionally.
Warm water for if you have like an ingrown toenail. Okay, but yeah.
No, this was the toxins.
Well, it could have just used those
Kanoki pads,
roll-on
pads.
Yeah. Like yeah. Jeez.
No, I had someone who's like, I say, you know, acupuncture is originally based on the number of rivers in China. Why should that work? And I had a student. This was back in Wisconsin. My aunt is an acupuncturist.
Ouch.
And I'm like, that's too bad. I mean, like, that's how I'd say it too.
Yeah, there's really nothing that you can.
And one thing and this is every semester, every class that I have, at some point, chiropractics comes up. I've recently started just when talking about it. First, I display a phrenology chart, then I show an iridology chart, and then I show a the foot one. Reflexology chart, yes. And then I show the chiropractic chart. You know, which vertebra is connected to the spleen. You know, like
that one, yeah.
It doesn't rhyme. It's not
and so it doesn't.
And then he takes a kid and goes with their necks, and they drop on the floor.
I ask them, how many of you have been to a chiropractor? And maybe 20% of them raise their hands. How many have had a chiropractor adjust your neck?
You're lucky to be alive.
A few less. How many people were told by their chiropractor that there's a chance that having a chiropractic adjustment could give you a stroke in your brainstem? And nobody has ever been told this. And out of the hundreds of students who I've asked, no one has ever been told. And I said, this is one of the major reasons they're not medical professionals. Because if they were a medical professional, they'd have to do a risk-benefit analysis. You'd have to be fully informed. There are ethical standards that doctors have to live up to.
Yep.
They still don't always believe me. But it's really nice. Yeah, stretches are nice.
Yeah, it feels good for a few hours.
Yeah.
And you gotta go back.
Well, this is a.
I really didn't have a topic tonight.
Well, you've opened up this huge mountain of things we could talk about forever, but I really want to get to
Eve's. Yes, me too.
Eve, because I'm worried about her. She's under attack.
Yeah.
And
wait, be quite careful. Can you hear that? That's what I'm under attack by.
Oh, wow.
Possibly.
That's mysterious.
I know.
And dangerous.
Oh, very much so.
We should nuke Cuba.
We should.
God, you could be president.
Apparently.
Oh, God.
The bar is so low now.
So I'm all sad now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, I'm just going to start that.
Senator Kid Rock.
Please change the subject.
Anything but
So, more than a dozen American diplomats in Cuba have suffered strange and in at least one case, serious symptoms. Headaches, dizziness, hearing loss, cognitive impairment. The symptoms resemble those of concussion. One case has been referred to as mild traumatic brain injury. So non-essential personnel were withdrawn from Havana a travel advisory was issued, and 15 Cuban diplomats were expelled from the United States.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't mild traumatic an oxymoron?
Yeah, I thought so. That's one of the problems, that there's a certain vaguitude in some of the descriptions, particularly the one serious, what seems to be serious injury or unwellness or whatever. But yes, it is.
Dis-ease, Eve, I believe is what
Yes.
Disease.
Yeah.
someone used that on stage. Sorry.
Dis-ease. I'm feeling very at dis-ease.
I know.
No one knows exactly what's happening. But as some victims reported hearing a loud buzzing or loud localized grinding noise, it has been suggested that some sort of sonic weapon may be involved.
Oh.
The culprit is thought to be this man. If you can bring up the first slide, or
Why did-
only slide, really.
Suspect.
I thought you were going to show the doctor with the sonic screwdriver, but
No,
This
this
is
man
fine.
plotting evil from his lair inside a handy volcano.
I blame the
No.
cat.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, there are such things as sonic weapons. They make very loud noises, excruciating noises, and they aren't terribly difficult to trace. You just
Except for harp.
follow. You just follow the loud, excruciating noise, and there's the noisemaker, really. But since no obvious source has been found for
what do they use those for? That's like crowd control and stuff, right?
Yeah. Apparently, they use them against
Gophers.
Somali pirates. They may have used them in Ferguson.
Yeah, we
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
They are supposed to be used for gophers. We tried them. They didn't work.
Well, actually, I mean, these devices that are just really loud, I would think it would annoy your entire neighborhood because they're excruciatingly loud.
That's what they describe the gopher things as, like having a really, really annoying, loud, noisy neighbor 24 hours a day. You know?
Yeah.
But our gophers didn't care.
Or just someone with a leaf blower and too much time on their hands. But because no obvious source has been found for the alleged device, it has been suggested that it may emit a sound that humans can't hear, either infrasound or ultrasound. And we should probably go back to contemplating Blofeld, my ultrasound device. The military has actually looked into infra and or ultrasound weapons, but gave up on those programs decades ago. I mean, they also looked into psychics, so there you go.
And dolphins.
Yeah.
And psychic dolphins.
Yeah.
Probably.
Ultrasonic psychic dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
In a New York Times article called "A Sonic Attack in Cuba," these scientists doubt it. Carl Zimmer explains some of the problems with sonic weapons.
Oh, do you know what? The editorial I saw, or the report by Zimmer that I saw was, what is a science reporter to do when the sound science isn't sound science?
Nah.
Somebody got paid a lot for that headline.
Yeah.
But not the article.
Yeah. So infrasound seems to be at worst vaguely annoying. So it doesn't really make a very good weapon. We probably all remember the Mythbusters episode about infrasound, and they could not make anyone poop with it.
The brown note.
Yeah, the brown noise. Yep.
Right.
Ultrasound. It's the most funny South Park episode, actually. So
it is one of the funniest. Yes.
Yes. So there.
Ultrasound can have powerful effects. It's used to break up kidney stones without surgery. And according to Zimmer, decades ago, researchers created intensely powerful ultrasound beams in laboratories that can kill a mouse at close range. However,
It's not hard.
Hold on. I just have to get really, really close to you and put this up against your head.
I was just gonna
And
say,
then
it's really not hard to kill a mouse at close range.
I know.
Well, that's
You know,
true.
they took the little speaker, just whacked the mouse with it.
That's exactly what I'm picturing. Speaker.
As you may have, some of you
Tried to
figured
turn the
out,
music on. Oh. Well,
close range is kind of a key term, as is, frankly, mouse. But
Yeah.
ultrasound is weakened by distance and walls and humidity. It turns out Cuba, kind of humid. And walls it will just bounce off of. But even if some supervillain has placed, for instance, many very small ultrasound emitters all over the U.S. Embassy that have somehow escaped notice, it's been suggested like maybe in a pillow. These weapons would be unlikely to produce some of the concussion-like symptoms reported. For instance, a sonic weapon cannot bounce your brain around in your skull.
Do we have any mice representing the United States in Cuba?
Well, it started with the cheese. And then some of the boys began to dress up. Well, at least Bob knows what I'm talking about. Also, a sonic weapon you can't hear can't damage your hearing.
No, but could it cause a concussion?
No.
Yeah, I don't
Apparently,
think so.
no, it cannot. So, the experts on sonic technology Zimmer consulted think a sonic weapon should not be high on the list of possible explanations. More likely possibilities include toxins, bacterial and viral infections, and, this one's important, contagious anxiety, also known as mass hysteria. As Timothy Layton,
Dogs and
professor
cats
of...
living together.
Sorry?
Dogs and cats living together.
No, yeah.
Anarchy.
Yep.
Mass hysteria.
Yes. As Timothy Layton, professor of ultrasonics and underwater acoustics at Southampton University notes, if you make people anxious that they're under attack from an ultrasonic weapon, those are the symptoms you'll get. And it's possible also that the one person who had, the serious, mild brain injury, and sometimes they talk about brain swelling or brain damage, that person could have had some sort of unrelated injury or illness or whatever.
And that could be a stressor for an office or for a...
Exactly.
Yeah.
But-
Can you think of a reason why our embassy staff in Cuba would be under stress right now?
No, none whatsoever.
Okay, so just making sure. Yeah.
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 And
I'm at a
well,
loss.
there have been some talks about the whole history of Cold War, because there were always rumors about what the enemy was doing and what they might have developed.
Mhm.
And so that might have come back to the surface with the improved relations with Cuba, and then the maybe not so improved relations with Cuba. Psychology Today, they had an article about it. They also mention, sick building syndrome,
Flu.
which often has turned out to be there's nothing actually in the building that's causing the illness. They mention after the anthrax attacks, after 9/11, when the post office started irradiating mail, and there were outbreaks of terrible symptoms at the irradiation hubs that was blamed on the irradiation. But irradiation has been used like in medical arenas for a long time.
Food.
It doesn't get passed on to anyone there. And then also all the sickness from Wi-Fi and such like. So it could be something.
Nuclear Wi-Fi.
Yes, that it could be something like that. We've certainly seen these sort of mass hysteria thing, sometimes school children. I don't know, when it's diplomats, you just don't automatically think, oh, they're just freaking out. We don't know
when the symptoms are very real. The symptoms are very real. That doesn't mean that it's not. It doesn't have a psychological source to it.
Right.
Your brain is part of your body.
Oh yeah.
People forget that.
Not mine.
And so we don't know exactly what's going on. It's probably not a sonic weapon. However, some victims did report hearing a persistent whining before they were taken ill. But it turns out
it's the dogs
there was
and
a Trump
cats
rally
living together. That's the whole cause.
Yeah. So that's all I got.
Yeah. That's interesting. I hadn't put a lot of thought into it other than thinking it was really strange.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, a student asked about it, and they actually had heard of some skepticism in the news about it, and that made me happy.
Well, my understanding is it's not only just in the embassy building. There are various places like hotels where diplomats were staying where these effects supposedly happen.
Well, there's the Canadian. Yeah. It
jumped. Yeah, Canadians as well. Yeah. So it jumped. Nationalities.
But
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But certainly, most of the symptoms are not uncommon with psychological contagion, except for that the brain injury one. But that one is described so.
It could be a brain injury.
Yeah, well, it could be, but also it is really described vaguely. So.
Yeah, I mean, most of that stuff is sounded like stuff that I've experienced in this past week.
Oh,
I have Cuba and embassy disease.
I've had those things too, but that's it's mostly probably just migraine.
Yeah.
Not deafness.
Yeah.
It could be robots, though.
It could be robots. I think.
You think?
Sonic robots.
Yes.
I blame Blofeld. Anyway.
Nano warfare.
No, but it could be this thing. Where's the button? That's right. I have a little robot story to talk to you about. Now, researchers they're researching lots of interesting things when it comes to robots, and I mean, first thing that comes to mind is one of the most pressing issues when you're developing new robot technology is, can you eat it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is a
hold on. Okay, I understand those words. Okay, yeah.
So there's a group in Switzerland, which which we agreed on earlier that it was in a location in Switzerland that I can't pronounce.
Lausanne.
Yes, Lausanne. The Laboratory of Intelligent Systems in Lausanne, Switzerland, has been researching, among other things, methods to create robots that are edible.
Not just to pick up apples.
And what is this purpose?
It's to make robots that are edible.
What is the purpose of making robots that are edible?
Take over your body and make you into an automaton.
Well,
for medical research?
I'm going to read the little bit they have.
Yeah, let's hear this shit. I got to hear this.
Okay. I assume this is translated, but here. Fully edible robots would help you to study how wild animals collectively behave. The robots could also take a role of animals' prey to observe their hunting behaviors or to train protected animals to do predation. and there's more. But
So
that's
simulated
enough.
prey.
So they're trying to build. I don't get it either. But what the hell? I suspect it's a method of us, torturing robots because we really want them to hate us. But that's just me. Anyway, so I'm going to show this little robot, little video. There you go, of this edible soft pneumatic gelatin actuator for edible robotics. So there you go. This is what it is. It's a gelatin form.
That's filthy.
With compartments in it.
It looks delicious.
Pneumonic air pressure to cause it to
become erect.
You had to go there, Bob.
Dude, look at that. That's just fucking filthy.
It's fine. Let me know if this is filthy. What, apples are filthy?
No, no. We'll see if it gets a boner for the apple though, and then I'll tell you if it's filthy. I think it's an interesting application that you could probably get away with rubber or something.
If you enjoy eating rubber, fine.
Yeah, but then your robot would be edible, Bob.
It would be edible. So there you go.
What the hell was that?
That was edible. A couple of edible actuators.
I didn't it's okay. So basically, so what we're gonna do?
It's Jello with holes in it. That's what it is.
Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah,
pretty simple mechanism.
Structural Jello.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've made lots of things out of gelatin or biodegradable substances.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
True, that's true. But I just like the idea that they're gonna etch circuits on hardtack and attach it to drones to fly it to Puerto Rico.
Yeah, but I mean, this actually doesn't have any circuitry in it. It's pneumatic, so the whatever mechanism
it has to be attached to something that has
pressure or vacuum, which is just air pressure, is actually doing the actuation. But yeah, I mean, it's
weird.
Like a lot of research projects, it's odd,
and the applications may not be obvious now. Down the line they may be, but not this one.
A PhD student somewhere said,
I'm with you, Bob.
I wonder if I could make that so I could eat it.
Yeah,
it's the whole edible thing that I get the biodegradable, I get the making the pneumatics with gelatin and all that. I don't get the application of edible. Yeah, it just doesn't.
Or then using it to lift something that in fact is
edible. Right. Makes
theoretically.
Are we sure this wasn't a culinary school in Lausanne? Or
pretty sure. I think they have a sister school and they're cooperating.
It's like
that's some interdisciplinary. Yeah, that's some interdisciplinary stuff.
Okay,
there.
guys, I could make a
I've
great
seen some
crossover episode
mixes.
of BattleBots and the Great British Baking Show. What do you think?
Yeah.
I've seen some bizarre mixes of interdisciplinary programs, but that's pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
So there you go. That is the next robot.
Ascension Taco. We're going to make it happen.
Your best defense for the next robot that comes to kill you may be eating it. Maybe, cooking its arm and serving robot steaks. Who knows? Anyway.
That's just so strange.
That is strange.
I mean, we've weird. Flexible robots and pneumatic robot, like jellyfish, robotic jellyfish and that sort of thing.
So is this weirder than the backpack on the dragonfly?
No, I was thinking of that though.
No. How about the
I can see an application for that. You could really fuck with dragonflies.
Hey, how about this? You make the backpack out of edible robot stuff, and then the whole dragonfly is edible. And
robotic gummy bears. Think about it.
Yes. Ooh, robo gummy bears.
Nice. That has potential.
As long as they're strawberry. Anyway, thanks for playing along.
That is totally different, dude.
It is indeed.
Sorry, the things that come up in my feed.
That's great and odd.
Anyway.
I thought the Swiss were sensible. They seem so laid back.
I think they hide it well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Someone came up with that over fondue.
Yeah.
A PhD student came up with that. They're weird anyway. So
no, you know what? They're hungry.
Oh my god, that makes total sense. It would only make more sense if they made it out of like chips or something.
Yeah, it's like ramen. It's made out of ramen noodles.
Ramen noodle tentacle robotics.
Yeah, but ramen noodles coming to life in any sort of way.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Well, on that note, I think we've gone over time, but let's do our wrap up stuff. First off, I want
Kidding,
to.
it's under what we usually do.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
That's true. We have a full complement.
About half an hour.
Go nice and long, but let's see. I wanted to give Alex Murdoch on Twitter credit for getting the movie, which is Repo Man, which I am playing to honor the late Richard Dean Stanton, who passed away a couple weeks ago. And we didn't do a show, so I couldn't do it last week. But hey, anyway, it's the best horrible movie you've ever seen.
I've seen Glenn or Glenda.
Is that a better horrible movie?
I don't know. I haven't seen Repo Man.
Come on, it doesn't make fun of Scientology.
Glenn or Glenda is worth seeing.
Yeah.
Especially
if you have a Mystery Science Theater going on with them.
Yeah, that was
this one you can actually watch without the parody part.
But would I want to?
It's got Richard Dean Stanton. It's got Emilio Estevez before, like when he's like super young and a punk. It's got weird sciencey guys with aliens in their trunk. No? Okay. Southern California. Okay, fine. I'm not selling it. Anyway, I don't think we have announcements. Do we have any announcements?
No.
Anyone?
I'm giving a talk to a class. That's not, and it's not open to the public.
Oh.
So really,
not really.
Yeah, I don't think so. Anyone else?
No.
I have a party coming up. If anybody is in Baltimore and wants to come, reach out to me online, and I will approve you. It's a very select invitation.
When is it?
It's I think it's in 2 weeks. So it's a week from Saturday. So if you're in Baltimore a week from Saturday, make sure to reach out. Anyway, let's do a book time. Who's got a book? Anybody got a book?
I'm looking for something interesting to read in it, so I won't go first.
Who's ready?
I'm ready.
Go, Eve.
In South Jersey, where I grew up, the Jersey Devil was kind of a local celebrity, the central figure in the state's most famous folk story, a sort of regional Santa Claus. Except in this case, Santa would eat your children, fly off with your livestock, and set your crops on fire.
As one does.
Or like normal Santa.
Cool. Who's next?
I can
I'll do it.
Go ahead.
Okay, Bob.
The most hateful forms of the genetic fallacy are those which convert a temporal sequence into an ethical system, history into morality. This pernicious error was embedded in a movement called historicism, which flourished in Germany during the period of 1790 to 1930, a school which stretched from the early work of Herder, Hegel, Schiller, and Schelling to the later work of Troeltsch and Menaechme. Historicism was many things to many people, but in a general way, its epistemology was idealist. Its politics were anti-democratic. Its aesthetics were romantic, and its ethics were organized around the nasty idea that whatever is becoming is right.
Barbara.
By the mid-1970s, Elvis Presley was deep in the throes of a dependence on prescription drugs. It should have been apparent to any observer, as evidenced by his dramatic weight gain and puffy face, his inability to remember lyrics, his slurred speech, and his rambling diatribes during his shows. According to Jerry Hopkins, author of Elvis the final years, it was a bad time for Elvis. Everything seemed to be coming apart. The King was in rough shape when he arrived to play a concert at University of Maryland. When Elvis arrived at the venue, he fell out of the limousine to his knees. As his band looked on in horror, he staggered up the stairs to the stage. Grabbing the microphone for balance and slurring his words, he swayed on his feet as he rambled his way through a 2-hour show. Elvis ended his performance with a tirade against the rumors that he was strung out on drugs, imploring his fans to take his word rather than that of movie magazines, gossip columnists, or reporters. 5 months later, he was hospitalized to treat an enlarged colon, the press was told. Years later, his private physician, George Nikolopoulos, confirmed that the main reason for his hospitalization was to allow Elvis to undergo drug detoxification.
The date is November 2nd, 1966. The time is 7:15 p.m. You are driving down a lonely stretch of highway somewhere between the valleys and the sloping hills of Western Virginia. Your car radio is tuned into a ballad sung by the late Patsy Cline, or maybe a Willie Nelson tune, before he grew hair out and got famous. Over your right shoulder, the sky is tinged with faint pink. The hills are an inky black, and as a light rain falls, you turn on the windshield wipers, but you barely need them. So you switch on your wipers every minute or so. Rainfall is minimal, and it's less distracting that way. A few passing cars catch you in their beams. Your trip home is relaxing as you travel through the slanting landscape. The world inside your truck is so comforting insulated that you struggle to keep your eyelids open. Perhaps you dream of your wife's famous homemade vegetable soup and putting your soaked feet up by the fire and making small talk with your better half about what happened at work today. Business was slow, but it should pick up shortly, as many homemakers would be expecting a new Singer sewing machine on Christmas morning, because that's what you sell at your store in Marietta, Ohio. Brand new Singer sewing machines. Almost dreaming, in a place between wakefulness, not mindfulness, and sleep, something enormous and dark rushes up behind you. The force makes your entire vehicle rattle and shake, just like Jerry Lee Lewis song. Yep. The thing is huge and dark and menacing. A tractor-trailer truck veering out of control? Can't be. There aren't any lights. Hey, what kind of crazy nut would be driving around without his lights anyway? Now, it's getting really intense. This thing pushes you off the highway. It's barreling down. Cripes. You struggle with your steering wheel and try not to bring your vehicle under control. Try to bring it. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
10 seconds, you get your truck to the side of the road. The craft, in quotes, as you will learn to call it later, side note, swerves slightly and then rolls over you, just like a ball of fire, and yet there are no lights to be seen. As you clutch your steering wheel with beaded sweat on your brow, you notice the door opening in the craft is some kind of hatch. Or is it a door? You see warm light and a man pass through. Yeah. A human arm helps him out the door. A tall stranger steps from the craft, walking toward you in an unhurried manner. As he gets closer to your car, the dark gray craft shoots 70 feet straight up and hovers suspended in space. This is very specific.
I feel like we're sitting around a campfire.
I know. You hear the man's words over and over. Do not be afraid. I mean you no harm.
This is the longest choose your own adventure ever.
Words will eventually sear into your brain. Yeah, the do you no harm words are going to sear in your brain. And like a brand, yet his lips do not move. That is the weirdest thing ever. And, your name is Woodrow Derenberger. And your life will never be the same. So now, your name is Woodrow Derenberger. Go ahead, Eve. What was your book?
I've forgotten. Oh, sorry. The Domestic Life of the Jersey Devil, or Bebop's Miscellany, and a modest inquiry into the origin of the Leeds Devil with remarks on the Keithian affair, Titan Leeds Ghost, Deborah Leeds' Last Will and Testament, Benjamin Franklin, Quaker refugees, Pine Rats, the Great Muselberg Visit of 1909, Harry Leeds' performance art, suburban identity crises, and the cultural relics of the old religion, etc., inspired by conversations with my grandmother, Helen Leeds, by Bill Sprouse.
That whole thing is the title?
Yeah, it's going back to, back in the 18th century and earlier, they could write titles or subtitles, and so it's like
They just couldn't stop. They couldn't stop writing them.
That's the problem, indeed. Yeah.
What was yours, Bob?
Mine was Historians' Fallacies Towards the Logic of Historical Thought by David Hackett Fisher.
Hackett Fisher. Huh. Barbara?
Mine was The Mirror Effect, How Celebrity Narcissism is Seducing America by Dr. Drew Pinsky and
Ooh, that looks
Mark
interesting.
Young.
Yeah, interesting. I went to West Virginia again last weekend, and every time I go to West Virginia, because for some reason West Virginia has tons and tons of ghost stories. So I usually stop at some bookstore somewhere and look for a ghost story book that I don't have. And this one, actually, it's called Cry of the Banshee.
I
History
have
and
that one.
Hauntings of West Virginia and the Ohio Valley by Susan Shepard.
I have not read it yet. I have that one.
Yeah. I went to Blackwater State Park, and there's a lodge there, and I went into their little gift shop, and they had an amazing number of paranormal and ghost books. Not only that, which is probably not coincidental, but the woman who was working in the bookshop was a paranormal researcher.
Yeah.
And loved telling me all her stories and which books were good. And she'd tell me there's a insane asylum you can go tour that's nearby and all this other stuff. So it was really kind of fun.
I thought you were reading like a novel or something to us, and I was thinking you don't usually just hear that in the second person. I think Bright Lights Big City started with "What's a girl like you doing in a place like this?" But it very
that whole book is in second person, and you never even learn your name. But
yeah, it's like a lot of these kind of books. They emphasize the ghost story, and not so much the history or the reality of it.
Of course,
which I like because I like the stories, but
but you can do both.
I know.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about the White Witch of Rose Hall in my class.
Oh yeah, I just saw that in here, or saw a White Witch. It's a different one. There's so many. Anyway. Okay, that was book time. That was fun. Any comments on the internet tubes? I've seen the original Dracula. That is bad. Yeah, that was a bad movie, Pierre.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
Yeah. Thank you. Do we have anything else to add? No? Okay, then. On the closing credits of the movie, I am going to call it. And there's the logo. And there's.
Do you see my name?
I saw your name. What?
No, it's changed.
Yeah. Bro, thank you. This is Skeptics is an anything production of What's the Line.net, Skeptics Humanities, myself, Bryce Videos Everywhere, and Del Palmini. The logo designed by Sarah Mead at and our theme music is by Music Camp and Music Potion. Got it in under time. Awesome.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Woodrow Darrenberger.